I know the world is fucking burning around me, but I'm not going to let it stop me. It's kind of like what I've learned through all of these shitty situations that somehow have come up in my life.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Badassery. I'm your host, Christine Lozada. This is a podcast meant to inspire you to be just 1% more badass today than you were yesterday. I like to interview people I meet through my travels. And I'm so excited for you to meet this badass, Mari, the queen of trips. She has gone through some crazy ass shit in her life, from surviving cancer to doing the trips that she just wasn't allowed to do as a Latina child, which that Latina child had to move back to the United States when she was in 11th grade. She had $20 in her pocket and she needed to figure out how to make money because her family back in Colombia needed and depended on her to make some money through their bankruptcy and more. I can't wait for you to hear the story. This woman is all positive energy. You would never have guessed. She's gone through the challenges that she had. Here's Mari.
I am the queen of trips. It's actually a name that my dad gave me because he was always upset that I always wanted to be outside of the house, in the streets. I always wanted to do something. I was always like, creating events or things to do. So I am a U.S. born daughter of Colombian immigrants. I am a solo female traveler, a cancer survivor, a woman that is inspired by so many women before me to go see the world and to not let anything stop me from achieving my dreams.
And your story is so powerful. I'm really excited to dive into it today. And actually, I'm reflecting right now on the first time I had the opportunity to meet you, because I first met you online, right? Mm-hmm. But you came to a women's travel festival in New Orleans through Wanderfest. And that was the first time I had a chance to meet you. And we really got to connect with a lot of female travelers and a lot of solo travelers on that trip. Yes. But I would love for you to take me back to your first, like not first necessarily, but your most transformative trip. I'm curious what comes to mind.
Okay, so there's actually two trips that I would consider my most transformative trips. The first one was months. So in 2007, I started traveling solo for work reasons. And back then there was YouTube, but it was like at the beginning and not many people were out there vlogging their adventures. There weren't many blogs that were created for women to travel solo. So for 6 months, I used to travel pretty much every week, and I was terrified to leave my hotel room because I used to think that serial killers could just like smell me out.
Actually, what for your work travel, like what kinds of places were you going to?
So some were amazing, but there was also some towns that were very small where there wasn't a lot of diversity, and so that can be a little bit scary, especially for somebody that's young and traveling solo for business for the first few times.
Yeah. Was it in the country or out of the country or both?
It was the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico.
Oh, yeah. So I can relate to this because my first job out of college was with Walmart.com. And a lot of people don't know that Walmart.com was in San Francisco. And I used to have the opportunity because of my role. I used to get on the private Walmart corporate jet and fly to Bentonville, Arkansas. And not only was I the only Asian person within like 100-mile radius, but I was really young at that time. I was like my first years out of college. And I remember not only feeling very like scared and alone, but always stared at. And a lot of times would face racism on those trips. And I would hide in my hotel room. I was scared to go out because same thing, right? We had no other people showing us what they were doing, on their trips on YouTube and blogs and all the things. So like, I hear this story and it's irrelevant for the young women now going on these trips because they have other things and content they can look at. Whereas you and I were like, we're so alone in our hotel rooms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, tell me about the first time you ventured out. Do you remember?
Yeah, I actually do. So one day, I also got tired of having all of these perks and nobody to go with, because I
Yeah.
always kind of held back on my trips, because I always said, when my boyfriend at the time uh, can come with me to my trips, then I'll be able to explore the cities. Or when one of my friends can join me, well, at least I won't be by myself and nobody will be able to see that. So I used to like wait and wait, and I was begging my friends and my boyfriend at the time to just come with me on one of my trips, because here I had, a really decent hotel room, per diem, and a spending account. So finally, one visit to New York City, I was like, I'm sick of this. I'm done. I just want to go out and explore the city by myself, because I'm going to end up just never seeing it if I keep waiting for people. And finally, I decided to go out. I don't even remember the name of the restaurant. It was somewhere in Midtown. And I sat at the bar by myself. And I've usually been an outgoing person, but there's also like with the culture, with Latina culture, there's like, you kind of being a little bit more reserved, not drawing too much attention to yourself, blah, blah, blah. So I sat at this bar, and within like 2 minutes, bartenders chatting it up with me and some other people that were at the bar. And I sat down, kind of in between other people. Somebody left, and here comes this woman, sits next to me, and we start chatting. And she was a dancer for one of the Broadway plays. And so it was so transformative, because I had told her it was my, one of my first few trips to the city. I had never seen a Broadway show before. And this lady gave me tickets for not one show, but
Oh,
two shows. And she said, just pick them up at will call. Like, she had me write out my name and my phone number. And then, for the next few days, I had really good seats at two different Broadway shows in New York City. And it was such
that
an amazing
is so
experience
powerful.
that would have never happened had I not given myself the opportunity to go out there and, like, just see what was going on in New York City at the time.
Yes, I'm so glad you did that because
Hmm.
so many people want to try traveling alone or these solo trips. And yet the first thing that pops into their head is like, I'm going to go to the furthest country away and
Right?
travel alone for weeks or months at a time. And it's like, yo, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Right.
Like off of a single trip or even in your own backyard. So many people have never gone and had a meal alone or
Uh,
just spent time
right.
alone in a city that might be in your backyard or might be a short drive or flight away. I
Right.
love that story. Yes. Okay, tell me about your transformative trip, non-work related.
All right, non-work related. There's also, I would have to say, two different trips. So
Okay.
my very first trip as a child, I was 4 years old, and my parents were going back to Colombia to visit family. And I have very good memory of my childhood. I remember just being fascinated with the idea of like getting on a plane and traveling to a whole different country. And so for years as a child, I used to play that I was like this um, scientist, because when I was a kid in the 80s, like travel for pleasure was, it wasn't that
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
that was for rich people, right?
I
And
understand. My parents are immigrants.
yeah. So I always thought that the only way that people like me could travel was if they were scientists that were going on expeditions. So I used to look at the National Geographic magazines when I was a little bit older and just like fantasize about these experiences going to like different countries. And I was like, how cool, to be somebody that can go on these excursions and all like these adventures. But that was like the first time that I realized that, it was somewhat easy to get on a plane and go to a different country. Like I had no concept of money at that time. When you're 4 years old, money is not like an issue to your
Of
imagination.
course not.
It's not a deterrent. So I used to just fantasize for years. I fantasized about like going on excursions. And then as an adult, I have to say that well, I would say my cancer victory tour, which was supposed to
Oh,
be a 5 month tour of Southeast Asia. I started it in February 2020. So
Oh, we
Yeah.
all know what happened around that time.
Yeah. So out of all of the southeastern countries that I wanted to see, I was only able to see two, which was Thailand and Vietnam. And it was, I mean, I am addicted more than ever. Like before, I used to think that language would be a barrier for me. Like you said, I ended up going to like the furthest away I could get and like the most culture shock for me. And I'm still hooked. Like I have to go back and finish that trip at some point in my life.
Heck yeah. I love the title of this, the
Mm-hmm.
Cancer Victory Tour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. We got to dive into this because you are a cancer survivor. Bring me back. What kind of cancer did you have? What was that process like, and how did you overcome it?
So I had breast cancer. I was diagnosed in October 2018, and I found out that I was in between stages. So I was something called like stage 2B to 3 because of sizing and where it was located. There's all of these categories for cancer staging.
Wait, actually, bring me back to the actual moment. Where were you when you found out, and how did you react?
So okay, so in my life, we'll go first to where I was situationally in my life. I was at a period of my life where I was done with a relationship, really. I was also like, it was at the cusp of when I decided that I was going to just grab my work laptop and leave
Oh, wow.
indefinitely
Yeah.
to travel the world to just see what I could make of my life with my laptop on the road.
Wow.
That's where I was like in my life.
Hmm.
Physically, I had gone to the doctor on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock. It was supposed to be a normal checkup. It was just like my doctor wanted me to go back into the office because I wanted a refill of my prescription. That's, I don't know that that's normal.
So it was totally like a routine. You didn't expect anything.
Right. And I wasn't even routine because I had seen her like 6 months before and I just needed a refill. And I guess something told her in her heart to tell me to come back
Mm.
for a review, like a redo of the checkup from 6 months earlier. But there was nothing of concern that would have drawn me back to the doctor except a prescription refill.
Yeah.
So she notices the lump in my left breast, and she gave me a prescription to get an ultrasound. And I'm still not connecting the dots. Like I'm just like, oh, it's just a normal Monday. I'm gonna go to Costco, but
Obviously, Costco.
life is so crazy that my sister actually works for a huge hospital here in South Florida.
Hmm.
And her job is to help people find their cancer, help like find cancers in
Oh,
people.
yeah.
So I sent her a picture of the prescription, and I tell you, it took longer for that picture to be sent than for her to call me back. And she started questioning me. She's like,
Wow.
"Who gave you this? What was the test? Like, what were you doing? And why did they give you this?" So I'm explaining it to her, and she says, "Well, you need to come to the hospital today." So I got scared.
Oh, of course.
I got really scared, and she's like, "Well, we don't really play around with this, so I need you to come to the hospital today." So my sister was able to find a spot for me on their schedule, and the longest day of my life started. By then it was like 10:30 in the morning. I never expected to have a mammogram that day, but they did
Yeah.
fit me in for a mammogram as well. And an ultrasound where I noticed that the ultrasound tech is like going over the same spot over and over and over, and I'm getting more and more concerned as time progresses. 30 minutes pass by. A doctor comes in and says, "Well, you need a biopsy," and I almost fainted because in addition to all of this, I have a very serious phobia of needles and medical,
Mm.
like, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a serious phobia of medical situation, like medical trauma, I guess. And it's actually stopped me from seeking treatment for many other things in
Oh,
my past.
wow.
And so I told the doctor, I don't know how we're going to do this, but if you let me leave the hospital today, I may not come back for a biopsy. So somehow they fit me in and I had a biopsy. So
Look at you
ultrasound.
being honest in that moment
Yeah.
and letting them know what you need to get it
Yeah.
done.
And also kudos to that doctor for listening to me, because there's so many women that are gaslit, like through the discovery of their cancers and other illnesses, that when the doctor actually ends up paying attention to the patient, they may be very far advanced in their staging.
Yeah.
So I'm like, honestly, kudos to that. I don't even remember her name because everything was like such a whirlwind. But I'm so appreciative that she actually listened to me,
Wow.
and I ended up having my first biopsy that day. Then the next day, I'm sitting at my little bullshit job. It's not bullshit, but when you're talking about cancer, like the stuff that you're doing,
Oh, it
you
don't
know,
matter.
I'm
No,
a
it don't matter.
professional emailer at that point, and I'm like, it's a life and death situation, and I'm just sending my stupid little emails, trying to pretend that the world is not on fire for me. And then, so it's like Tuesday now, noon. Typically, results that are negative come back fairly quickly. And then I'm like suffering, and of course I have somebody on the inside that I've already signed off my sister. I had signed everything necessary for her to be able to
Yeah.
access all of my records. So
So you found out at this point, and you found out pretty quick, like everything happened basically within a 24-hour period of time. And
yeah.
so you were diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, between
Yeah.
stages 2 and 3. And what it like, fast forward, like what was that process like for you?
So the first 2 weeks that you get a cancer diagnosis, you cannot hear anything that anybody says. It's kind of like the Peanuts cartoons where you hear the teacher wah 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 wah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's kind of that feeling like you don't understand anything that's going on. I was in denial for a really long. I was in denial almost up until my mastectomy, which was in April 2019. So
That's a long
like 6
time.
months, yeah. But I still did chemo in denial.
What does that
So
mean that you were in denial about it? I can't really wrap my head around that.
I didn't believe that I had cancer.
Ah,
I just thought that that was something that was not happening to me. It was happening to somebody else, but it was like my soul was out of my body and my body was going through this physical situation, but somehow like my mind had split. And I was in denial for a really long time about it until almost pretty much until it was time for the mastectomy.
that is a long process and a
Yeah.
long time.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, there are many cancer survivors that have gone through longer
Mm-hmm.
periods of
Yeah.
time. But what did that entire thing, what did that whole thing teach you?
Oh my gosh. Well, one of the things that I learned about myself is that I'm a lot stronger than I give myself credit for.
Oh, I like that one.
Again, dealing with this medical phobia forever about, medical fear, or like fear of needles and things like that. I always hid behind that phobia. I didn't like, I gave myself permission to hide behind that fear, but here I am in a cancer situation where I really didn't have a choice. And so I kind of had to gather strength from, for me, I am a believer. I'm not a religious person, but I am very spiritual. And so I, found strength through God and prayer, and I still won't go to church, but, but I do, pray every day and appreciate my life. And so I found that strength through something spiritual. And other things that I learned about myself was that I was never gonna let, things stop me from the things that I want to do, like things like money or, things that we typically see as obstacles. Do I live an extremely lavish life? No, but I will not let things like money stop me from doing and living experiences that I want to live.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I love spending time around you because you're such a positive um, energy force. Like I feel that from you, and I really feel how your thankfulness to be alive and to do
Yeah.
these things. And there are a lot of things that you are saying yes to and signing up for,
Yes.
even if as a growing up a Latina child, like you may not have been allowed to do those things.
Hmm.
I'd love to start with solo travel first,
Hmm.
because, even for me, and for those listening who don't know, my parents were born in the Philippines. Um, they were not a rich family when they came over, and my grandfathers, both of them, were in the Navy,
Hmm.
and I have nine, aunts and uncles on each side. These are humongous
Yeah.
families that don't have a lot of money, but really sought, opportunities and experiences for the rest of their family.
Right.
But I was taught as a child, like, don't draw attention to yourself, like don't all the things. And traveling alone was not on that list. Like, you're not supposed to travel alone, especially as a woman.
Hmm.
Like, what man is going to be protecting you if you go travel alone? I'd love to hear, like, what was your first solo travel trip? Like, where was it to and what was it like?
So actually, my first solo travel trip was I was 18, I was 17, and I was coming back to the States from Colombia. And so my parents moved when I like it was like 1990. We decided to move to Colombia, which was not the best time to move there, but my dad was tired of living in the United States. Like our system here, for immigrants, it's really hard. It's hours and days of extenuating hard work. And so at some point, my dad got burnt out and
Hmm.
decided that he wanted to go back to his country. So we went. Obviously, if you know historically, Colombia in the 90s was not the easiest country to move back to. So it was also like a huge culture shock for me and my sister. So at 17, my parents end up bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
We lost everything that we had in Colombia,
Wow.
and thankfully my grandmother, she had houses in Colombia. We weren't rich, but my family was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to live in one of my grandma's house. um, so I was 17, and I knew that there weren't going to be many options for me in Colombia, so I decided to move back to the United States. So it was the first time that I actually got on a plane by myself.
Holy shit, you're
um,
young. This is
mhm.
really young.
Yeah, and I came back to the US.
What made you know that you needed to go back? And what were you most afraid of during that time?
Well, I was a very sheltered child. I have to say that my dad was very strict, and so I wasn't allowed to go out many places by myself. So
Well, I can relate to this entirely.
uh, I was allowed to go out to parties till like 11 o'clock.
Oh yeah, same. Curfew all day. Curfew all day.
My high school friends, all we always like laugh about it now, but oh my god, they used to call my dad like names like my dad. They used to say that my dad was like from the NASA because he would find me anywhere, or that he used to work for the FBI. Because my dad would find me at any house party, he would come and get me, and
Yeah.
so I was a very sheltered woman. At 17, you're not fully a woman, but you're like, so I knew because I was in 11th grade, and I started looking for work because again my parents were bankrupt at that point, and I'm the oldest kid, so I had to kind of assume the responsibility. My dad went through a horrible depression that landed him in the hospital for months, almost.
Wow.
I If I remember correctly, it was almost a full year that he was in the hospital.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And so I'm the oldest kid. So typically in Latino families, and I'm sure in Asian families, this happens as
Oh
well.
yeah, you got a job no matter how old you are.
Right. The responsibility typically falls on the oldest children.
Hmm.
So that was my very first solo trip coming back to the US. I came back with $20 in my pocket, which was like as much money as my dad could give me at that time. And I came to live with my parents' best friend here, which I'm also extremely grateful to, because she was like a second mom to me. And imagine taking a child, like a teenager who's 17, she has two kids of her own. So that wasn't an easy thing for her, but she was so willing and so giving to, give me a place in her home for an entire year, that I didn't have
Wow.
to worry about, rent or anything like that.
Holy shit, Mari. Okay, so you're in 11th grade, you're 17, you're coming back to the United
Right.
States to make money to
Right.
be able to provide for your family in Colombia. You got $20 in your pocket. What did that entire experience teach you?
I think throughout my life, the theme is that I still don't give myself enough credit for like all of the things that I have had to show this like strength for. And I guess internally, until very recently, and these are things that I've been healing at camp, and which we'll get into later, but that I don't give myself enough credit for the strength that I, how strong I am and how resourceful I am, because I know that it's not that it. There's a lot of people that would have probably sat and dwelled on this. And yes, I've had bouts of depression throughout my life, because it is a lot to handle. I'm never going to deny that. But I have learned that somehow I have gathered strength from within, from God, from, you know, from examples from my own mother as well, to just keep pushing, like with a smile on my face to top it off. Like,
Yeah.
it's not toxic positivity, because I don't pretend that things are, going great. I know the world is fucking burning around me, but I'm not going to let it stop me. It's kind of like what I've learned through all of these shitty situations that somehow have come up in my life.
Yes, I love that. Part of the reason why I like to ask people, and I know you already know the question I'm going to ask you later, I like to ask the badass question because a lot of people are not embracing their badassery. And sometimes you need the strength to do the really difficult things, for example, that you've done in your life, coming back with $20 in your pocket to the United States alone in 11th grade, super young, or battling cancer. It's like there's no time to celebrate how much strength you have. You got too much to do,
Yeah.
and that you get through it. And once you're through it, then it's on to the next thing. And you don't take a moment necessarily to evaluate and experience what you've just accomplished. Give yourself that credit. And sometimes I feel like it's important for me to ask people about their badassery so that they can step into that. Because one of the things I wonder is some of the most badass people I know will answer that question. No, I'm not a badass, because there will always be someone that had it harder than you, someone that had cancer that was a little bit worse, someone that only had $19 in their pocket and not 20,
Right.
and who was in a 10th grade and not 11. Like,
Right.
there's always going to be someone else who either had it harder or is more badass or whatever it is. But we all need to appreciate ourselves
Right.
and what we have done. Because the more that we can, the more we love ourselves and the more we appreciate our own power and strength, the more we can give that back to the world, because there is way too much hate and there is way too much shit burning to the ground all around us.
Right.
We need more love, and we need more courage to give back our gifts to the world.
Absolutely.
Oh, all right. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story, because holy mofo, that was powerful. Let's shift to a couple of the things that you've done recently that you didn't have a chance to do as a child.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to hang out with you at Camp Indie, which was fantastic. And for those who are listening that don't know, Camp Indie, the way I describe it is it's kind of it is an adult summer camp. So it's like all the kid activities for adults only with lots of unlimited booze around.
Yeah.
But Camp Indie is specifically for people who are or would like to be location independent. In other words, traveling and working in the world anywhere. We basically come together to talk travel and give each other inspiration through a kind of unconference environment. Is that kind of accurate?
Yes, I would say that perfectly describes it.
One of the things I was fascinated about to hear from you is, as a Latina child, like you never got to experience summer camp.
No.
And this was like your first, I don't know, what was Camp Indie like for you? I'd like to hear about it.
Okay. So, and I think you heard this from my friend, the other Latina at the
Yes,
trip, which was Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, who's amazing. And we
Yeah.
will link her info in the description below. She was another Latina that was on the Camp Indie trip. And it was very transformative for both of you.
Yeah.
And you got to experience together. So tell us more.
So, Latino parents can be very strict. I'm not going to say we're a monolith. So, but for the most part, stereotypically, Latino parents don't allow you to do a lot of stuff when you're young. If you had fun this Saturday, you're not going to have fun till next Saturday. Once a week, and that's it. And you better be happy about it. So, what else? We are not allowed to like sleep outside of the house. So like sleepovers are a huge no. And they may be like super limited even within your family. Like there was only one cousin's house that I was allowed to go sleep over at her house. So we don't, we do like maybe day summer camps, is what's kind of like, and even then, if it's if your parents can afford it, because, you know, there is a cost involved with sending children to summer camp. And some
Yeah,
Latino.
I did not go to camp as a child. I begged to go to the Boys and Girls Club. Like it wasn't even overnight camps; it was just day camps.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was no money to do that. I was sitting at home watching TV, which was
Right.
my babysitter.
That's what we did. And you know, me and my sister and my cousins, we would play fight at home. Like we would wrestle each other. That was our summer camp. I don't know if you ever saw Glow when you were a kid. The women in wrestling. Oh my God.
That's hilarious. All
Yeah.
right, so basically, you never had this experience of camp
No.
as a child. What was it like for you as an adult?
So it was amazing because you know, when we first got to Camp Indie to see it, it's like what you see in the movies, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Like
true.
all of these campy movies, which by the way, some of them were like horror films. And so I'm like, I don't think I should base my my expectations of camp on Friday the 13th. Like
That's so funny.
no.
It really was a quintessential camp-like experience, and that it's like on a lake
Right.
amongst the trees with
Yeah.
like hiking paths. It's a humongous camp. And
Yes.
like you can do everything from like water activities to the ropes course to like zip lining to, and like it was actually big enough that one of the days I was like, maybe I should like rent a bike, which they provide at camp,
Right.
to actually see all of camp. And then I was like, nah,
Yeah.
I'll just send my drone and look.
Also, the town's like not that close. It's not
Oh
like
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
you were at camp. Mhm.
Yes. So, you know, you arrive there and it's exactly like the movies and you're like, "Oh my God, this is real. Like the kids actually do this." And and then I was kind of a little overwhelmed but with happiness, right?
Yeah.
And then the first activity we did was tie dyeing, and I was like, oh, destroying t-shirts? What? Because that was the other thing. Latinos don't destroy you're not allowed to destroy your shirts or anything tie dyeing them. Like your parents either bought you the shirt tie dyed, but this whole thing of like creating it yourself, no, we're not damaging the shirts. So,
Actually, hold on a quick pause. Because like you
mhm,
were truly living like a childhood dream that you've always
mhm,
had, but as an adult. Like
right,
before young Mari goes through all of the challenges and tribulations that she would later go through, if you could go back and tell how old are you when you actually go to camp normally when you're a kid, like 10?
you're yeah,
Like
like
something like that. Basically,
yeah.
childhood Mari. If you could go back and like give her a piece of advice or a piece of strength, because she doesn't know what's coming ahead to her with all
Right.
the things, what would you say to your younger self?
Oof. So this actually made me cry at camp. It was during breath work. This was one of the things that we talked about, but or like we were thinking about. But honestly, I would just hug my 10-year-old self and kind of encourage myself to, keep moving forward, to not think that so many things were my fault, that I didn't cause all of the bad things that happened to me.
That makes me cry also. For those watching the YouTube video, we're both just losing our shit. That's that's a really important one because there are a lot of times that we take responsibility for our lives and our situations when a lot of times there are things happening out of our control.
Right.
And sometimes, yeah, I can understand.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
We've had a moment. All right, wow. Tell me more. So you did a lot of the breath work at camp.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's something where it's funny because the way Travis Sherry of Location Indie, who heads up both Location Indie and Camp Indie, he talks about not being a woo woo kind of person. And I'm also not like a kumbaya woo woo kind of person, but there was something really powerful that happened at camp, which
Mm-hmm.
was there was someone who came in, Jacob, who led everyone through a few different what he called breathwork sessions, which for
Right.
me, I'm just like, how is that like breathing and meditation? Because like I don't need to fall asleep right now. But it was not that,
No.
and all of them were different. But talk us through one of your experiences and what it was like and what you did.
So I was also very skeptical about breath work,
So
be-
skeptical. I was like, what is this?
because I didn't realize, or I didn't think that me breathing in a certain technique would help me unlock things from my memory, or like help move things that were blocked.
Right? Like even just saying it, it's like, what? Like
Yeah.
really does it? But if in the right setting and like when you're brought through it by someone who's guiding you in the right way, well, anything is possible, but what you've just described is absolutely possible. Keep going.
Right. So I I was I didn't realize how vulnerable we would get in that like in that setting, right? I That's not one of the things that I expected to do at camp, at adult camp. But I do appreciate that there was so much focus on inner healing, because one of the things. So at this point, I've already gone to at least 8 different conferences, many where I have seen you, and I do learn a lot, and I'm there to build relationships with people, but we can learn a lot at those conferences, but if we don't tend to our inner selves, all of those things that we learn are kind of gone by the wayside by, weeks later after a conference. You come back home, you're hyped, but if you don't do any healing, that information's kind of lost. So here we are. There's a like this massive breathwork setting. Everybody's quiet, and we start this like I'm super skeptical. I'm listening to the technique and doing it myself, and then Jacob, starts walking us through some prompts during the breathwork. I don't even remember the majority of them. I just know that we start unleashing some heavy emotions, and it's not just me, like it's everybody's kind of like dumping their these blocks, these energetic blocks. I I have very little words for how to describe this, because
That, like, I'm actually enjoying how much you're struggling because it's one of those things that you really have to be there
right,
to experience. Not that I want you to struggle on this podcast, but
right,
there's something really powerful that happens also when you are in person with a room full of people all experiencing the same thing.
right,
The energy, what I experienced in the breathwork session was a complete shift of the energy,
yeah,
and also a shift of a feeling of sharing and support by
right,
everyone because we're all experiencing the same thing and
right,
some really heavy emotions.
mm-hmm,
Um,
right.
I guess what like what has sat with you? Because now fast forward, it's been a few weeks since camp. Like what takeaway did you have from that? Or how have you come back into the world a different person post adult summer camp?
So post adult summer camp, especially after all of the breathwork sessions, I do feel that there was like things in my childhood that I needed to forgive myself for. Actually, immediately after the breath work, I texted my sister and asked her for forgiveness because, you know, between siblings, there's always things that as a child you don't, you know, realize, but that are pretty much abusive. And so I, you know, one of the first things I did actually was text my sister and like explain, you know, like write a whole, we were back and forth for like 30 minutes. About things that happened in our childhood. I also want to extend that healing to my family members. So I was actually encouraging her and I to go to breathwork sessions as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
And then I've been talking to my aunt and my mom because I want us as women in the family to have healing sessions as well. Because so my mom's also going through a very rare cancer treatment, of treatment for a very rare cancer. Um, and I want my mom to have the best quality of life possible. And even though she's even more positive than I am, I know that there's things in her life that she needs to heal. So the way that I came back from camp was that this healing is not just for me, that so many people in my life can benefit from this. So I want to be like the person to offer these solutions as resources to
Yeah.
my family.
That's really powerful. Like, who would have thought we'd go to an adult summer camp in which we just expected to be like zip lining and drinking booze all day, and we really kind of come out of it having healed a part of ourselves and really connected with ourselves. And now you are connecting in a new and a different way with your family. I would
Right.
say one learning that I had, one of the breathwork sessions that I went to was around connections, and you were really just literally staring with no words at another person in their eyes while there were, again, prompts that were given. And so it'd be like, you know, greet Mari with your eyes only. And you can say so much with your eyes without, you know, without saying, literally saying anything. And one of the takeaways that I had from that, that I've kind of held with me to this day, and I know it will stay with me for a long time, is there is a desire for, we are human. We're
Right.
human and we like to connect with other humans, because the worst punishment that we have in the United States, aside from the death sentence, is to put someone in solitary confinement, to remove them from all human beings. We deeply seek love and attention from people. And what that connections workshop has really taught me was how much people are dying to be seen who are not seen.
Yeah.
And that by simply acknowledging others, some of these people, I didn't even know their names, right? Because we didn't actually talk at all.
Right.
And after staring into their eyes and allowing them to truly be seen, like there was a lot of crying that was happening, because for some people, they feel like no one really sees them or notices them or anything. And you are very seen in a connections workshop like that, and very connected with the other person. And so one takeaway I've had is just really trying to, in every time I'm connecting with people, really try to see them, really
Right.
try to acknowledge them and whatever it is that they're telling me. Whether, you know, Meatball right now is trying to tell me it's time for dinner, even though he knows I'm in this podcast recording. I'm not going to acknowledge that at the moment.
Amy Paul.
I know, right? Oh, Meatball. Oh, you. That's really powerful. Wow. Okay. So we've kind of run a full gamut of, from your childhood stories to $20 in your pocket to being a cancer survivor. I already know the question, or the answer to the question I'm going to ask you, which is, are you a badass? Tell me why. You are a badass, Mari, but tell me why in your words, and muster up all of the strength that you have built over the years, and tell your childhood self why she's a motherfucking badass. All right, tell me. Go.
So hell fuck yes, I am a badass. It took me a long time to accept that I am a fucking badass. And the reasons why I'm a badass is because as much shit as I've had to walk through, I've always made it out victoriously. So I'm still here, and I'm grateful for every day that I am above earth, enjoying my life, smiling, having a good time with my friends and family, and seeing all of the beauty that the world has to offer, both, geographically and in other people, because I do find a lot of beauty in other, in other human beings. There's so many people out there that, like you said, are not seen, and I love to build relationships with people, especially I loved having friendships with women, because I feel like for the longest time there's been this stereotype about, oh, women are so catty and they can't stand each other, and that's listen.
Not true.
Yeah, exactly. The majority of my support network was amazing women that helped me through this cancer, because I didn't survive cancer by myself. My family and my friends survived cancer with me.
That is really powerful. Hell yeah, Mari. And you're about to start doing some really cool things. I'll just put it that way as a lead in for people. Where can people find you at?
So right now, my main platform is Instagram. I am working on launching a blog that will be travel focused, but we will also talk there about healing from cancer and how travel has helped me heal. And then hopefully at a conference soon as a public speaker. I would love to share my story and, help other women survive the shit that they may be walking through.
Hell yeah. What a powerful story. Thank you, Mari. I appreciate you podcasting with me.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of this time and the space and your platform to be able to share my story.
I think you can see why I love Mari. Her story is so powerful and really did require so much courage. She's such a strong woman and so full of energy. Connect with her and connect with me. I'm at Christine Lozada everywhere. If you felt something from this, tell us. We'd love to know. And please leave a positive review. It really does help to distribute this to more people. In the meantime, go forth, be badass, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.